Trees like this one, for me, always encourage imagination. I want to know what it's lived through, who's sat at the bottom of its trunk, and even what's lived within its branches. Veteran trees are so important. All the deep bark and crevices and natural holes give room for life. Everything from our invertebrate species to our birds, and even some of our rarest mammals, like the bats. 14 of our 18 bat species in the UK regularly roost in trees. But these species are really tricky to find, and we know very little about them. Today, I'm teaming up with ecologist and bat conservationist Jim Mullholland, whose 5-year research project in Gloucestershire is focused on understanding and improving the future of tree-dwelling bat species. So I know, obviously, when you think about bats, you think about caves or even people's rooftops, but actually the majority of our UK species like to roost in trees.
They do indeed, yes. They all have different requirements. And so when we look at the tree behind us, we can see features such as splits and cracks, or maybe a bit of flaking bark. And these create crevice-type features.
And do they have a preference for specific tree types or older trees like these veteran trees?
Well, the longer a tree has been living and growing, the greater the opportunity that the tree has to develop these types of features.
These unique formations in trees are so important for bats. Some of our rarest bats never roost in urban areas, so these veteran trees are vital for them. Jim and his team have been surveying these forests for years to find out where exactly they like to roost, so they can pave the way for brand new protections. I'm joining Jim on a survey, visiting a confirmed bat roost to see if anyone's home.
Yeah, you made that look easy.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
So the roost is just ahead of us here.
This is it.
That tiny thing there. And the entrance is only maybe a couple of centimetres wide.
I mean, it's so tricky. I mean, there is no way that I would have ever found this naturally. So should we see, well, if there are any even inside?
Sure. So here I have an endoscope, and we are going to use this to have a look inside the feature. It's important to say that I have a licence to allow us to do this, because we may be encountering bats and therefore disturbing bats. I see a ring.
Have you got something? Oh my God, a little face. We have bat. Oh my gosh, look.
And the ring is one of the animals that we've encountered before, so it may have been the female bat that we tagged initially and followed back to this roost.
Wow, so she could be using this time and time again. I mean, that's good data, isn't it, to understand that females are coming back to the same place over and over again.
Absolutely. So you can see the really big ears, gap between the ears. That tells us is a Beckstein's bat, one of the UK's rarest bats.
You're kidding. It's a Beckstein's bat.
Incredibly lucky.
That's amazing. Honestly, yeah, I think that's made my spring.
So I'm going to come out now, so we don't want to cause too much disturbance.
Surveys like this one can help support protection orders of roosting bats and their nesting sites. But as land use changes and more veteran trees are felled, these natural cracks and holes that bats rely on are becoming few and far between. So Jim and his team are having to think of a more radical way to support the future generations.
Okay. It's a pretty big bit of wood you've just cut out.
What we're trying to do here is to create some roosts in living trees.
Most people would just simply put up a bat box. So why not just kind of nail one up to a tree?
So bat boxes are great. They have their place, and we know that some species will use them, but they're not suitable for all species. Bat boxes get a little bit too hot during the summer and a little bit too cold during the winter. And so compare that to a tree. You've got lots of wood surrounding the bats. That's full of moisture. That's drawing water up from the roots all the way up to the leaves. That keeps things cool in the summer and warmer in the winter.
Got to ask the question, does it damage the tree at all?
So yeah, it does. But What's useful to understand is that trees grow in a completely different way to you or I. So when they're damaged like this, they will seal off that area and then just carry on growing.
To create their new potential roosting site, Jim cuts the back of the wood away. And a hole is then drilled into the front to provide access to the new cavity. This ingenious design replicates the cracks and damage that can only appear in older trees and will hopefully provide these tree-dwelling bats with new roosting sites. Although it may be a few years before we know how successful this method is, it's projects such as these that are providing pioneering new means to safeguard the future of our wildlife.
There we go. It's all in. Job done.
All we need now are the bats.
I think that's what I like about this project so much, though, is that it is so new and it's based off of recent science. And this is definitely a very new approach.
We're breaking new ground here. I'm really excited, and I hope we look back on this moment and say, yeah, it was the start of something really good.